use that for questions. Yeah. Come along, folks. Don't be shy. Don't be shy. Anybody else? Are you joining us, folks?
Testing.
No? No. Just loitering with intent. Okay. Anybody else coming in? No? No. Okay. Right. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us for this panel discussion. My name's Steve Jordan. I'm the editor of the Mover magazine. And I want to tell you a little story just by way of introducing this panel, because this is something that's always puzzled me a little bit. And that is that when I write stories for the magazine, I will see people and I'll ask them to send me some photographs to go with the story. And I've done a story about their company. And they will have told me during the conversation that their greatest asset is their people. We all know about that, don't we? The greatest asset is their people. It's become a cliche. And the reason it's become a cliche, like most other cliches come about, is because it's true. So I then say, okay, would you please send me some photographs of your company to go with this story? And they send me a picture of a lorry. Now, don't you think that's weird? I've always thought that was weird. Because, but the serious point is that although people will say that their greatest asset is their people, I question sometimes whether they genuinely really believe that. And this session is about people. It's about what I would call your greatest asset and how the world of employment is perhaps changing. And so in the panel today, we have the CEO of Red Recruit, Caroline Sear. We have the MD of Andrew Pearson Training, who fortunately, and by pure coincidence, is called Andrew Pearson. And to run the session today for the next half an hour, 45 minutes, the Director General of BAR, Ian Studd.
Hello. This is where you hope the technology... wonderful. So, I am a lifelong mover, okay? I've been in the industry for 50 years, so I'd like to think I know a little bit about what the industry is about, and that is covering operational roles into administrational, sales, and management roles. What is true now, and always has been true, is that finding quality people is a challenge, okay? But where are we at now? We're at a sea change, I think, in this industry. And if we're serious about being seen as a profession, and we all talk about that all the time, we're professional tradespeople, then we have to start acting in that way in our recruitment and retention strategies, okay? And if we don't, the consequences are that we're going to continuously be fishing around at the bottom of the pond for whatever might be left. And we don't necessarily, again, then get the commitment, and we don't necessarily get the longevity that we might want, okay? So first and foremost, if we are serious about being viewed as a profession, then we have got to act that way. And we've got to act that way in how we deliver the service, we've got to act that way in how we employ people, and we've got to act that way in how we support people, okay? What do you think, and I'll ask the question, what's the most important factor, do you think, for somebody looking for a career in this industry? What might that be? Progression? Anybody? Yeah? Anything else? Tell you what I didn't hear then. I didn't hear how much is the hourly rate. But that's what we seem to focus on. It's the same principle in terms of how we employ people as it is in terms of how we sell the service. Price will always be a consideration, but it should never, ever be the only consideration. And if we think back, and again, this is going back into my years in the industry, both as an employee and as an employer, that historic model has been that the basic hourly rate, the basic week's wages, have been almost deliberately suppressed because we wanted our people to be hungry to do overtime, recognising that this has never historically been a 40-hour-a-week job. So we wanted our people to be hungry. And that was coupled with a background of historically families being single-income families. And so the employee was hungry to do that overtime because there wasn't any money coming from anywhere else. That situation has fundamentally changed over the last 15 or 20 years, and that has accelerated enormously over the last couple of years. Okay? Whether we think it's right, wrong, or indifferent, and I say this very respectfully, people now actually have a social life. They have a family life. They have a commitment outside of work. They do not want to be spending 60, 70 hours a week moving furniture, sitting behind a desk, operating trucks. They want to have a fixed working week. They want to be paid well for doing it. Okay? So that combination of attracting the right people isn't just about the money, it is also about shaping contracts that meet the needs that they have today. Whether we like it or not, there is an expression that floats around, what's in it for me? And that is something as employers you have to consider in your recruitment strategies. What can you do to encourage that person to join you and then stay with you? Okay, so structured contracts, decent rates of pay, and then what else might you do? Michael there mentioned the word progression. When somebody joins your business, they're going to want to see, where can I be in a year's time? Where can I be in 3 years' time? Where can I be in 5 years' time? And one of the great things about this industry is that we have some fantastic career opportunities, but they're not always visible. They're not always mapped out. They're not always apparent. So when we're trying to attract somebody, we've got to be able to say to them, okay, the role today might be a porter or a packer or a driver, but here is a career path that we can take you through. And I will cite my own experience here because I end up as the DG of the BAR. Did I see that on the radar 50 years ago? Not a chance. So all of the career changes that I've had over the years have almost been by accident rather than chance. It was about being in the right place when the right opportunity came up, and then having the bottle to say, yeah, I'd like to have a go at that. And there's been a few disasters along the way, by the way. But in today's world, that isn't good enough. We've got to be able to demonstrate that career path if we're serious about recruiting people. And I do think, as I said a moment ago, I think that is a sea shift in where we are today. And we need to link all of those things together. Professionalism, proper tradespeople, proper employees, proper investment in training and development, and proper conditions of work, including remuneration. That's my view on life. So at this point, I'm going to ask Andy to say a few words on what his view is. We'll then move on to Caroline, and then we'll open up the floor for a debate. Andy, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Ian. So, when I was asked to give a small talk today about this subject, I thought I would just tell you my own personal story. So for those of you that don't know, in 1986, which was 37 years ago now, I was very fortunate to get a job at Richard Neave Limited, which then went on to become Britannia Neaves of East Anglia. And working for Rick was a real genuine experience, and I'll be internally grateful. But one of the things that the company had the ethos of 37 years ago, everything revolved around training. So not just the road crews, but all of the staff were always on training courses, wherever they may have been, learning practical skills. Running that alongside learning from the experienced guys already on the road, holding regular team meetings. Me personally, I was always putting myself forward for the more difficult jobs. Obviously, we were members of BAR as well, and attending area meetings, conferences, being involved at every level. We had TMI back in those days. We had packing competitions, which later on in life I went on to judge. We had study tours in 2001, 2003. Your moving group had a study tour in 2018, but there's so much to learn, and everybody was interested in their work. This progression that Ian was just talking about, it was installed in us, you know, and it wasn't just me that felt that way. Now, myself personally, I haven't always got things right, because in 2005, after 19 years at Britannia Neves, I decided to go it alone. And I set up my own moving company called APAC. And you can't just sit back in your ivory tower. That business actually failed after 7 years, which was very sad. But, you know, there was a few mitigating circumstances, but essentially work dried up. We didn't have the experience on the road to back things up that were going on, and a lot of lessons learned. And, you know, one of the main ones was not having all our eggs in one basket. So I was quite fortunate in 2013 just to start all over again. So my moving company, as well as my training business, is Family Movers. But this time we really concentrated on quality, having something to sell, and doing things properly and doing things top end and earning the right money and investing it back into the business, and especially in staff training. Because to me, your road crews are absolutely everything. You can't just assume that they're out there doing the job the correct way. And it's getting more and more difficult to employ people at the moment. You know, they want a lot more. It's almost like when you set somebody in for an interview, it's almost like they're interviewing you, not the other way round. And it's because people want a lot more. As Ian said, you know, they want a social life. They don't want to be working 90 hours a week. So some movers are getting this right, and other movers not so. But if you need to have something to sell, you know, and having experienced people is one of your biggest selling points. I'm just looking at some friends of mine, Jackie and John. I was talking to Jackie last night in the restaurant, and the biggest thing that she has to sell every day as a surveyor is John, with his, how many years experience now, John? 48 years, yeah, okay, which is absolutely amazing. So myself now, you know, I have a good mixture of all the basic skills that I learnt many years ago, all the things that Rick used to install in me many years ago, I now put together with the latest methods and the latest ideas, you know, and that's how I run my business now as a mover, and just do things a lot better than we've ever done. So I'll be eternally grateful for Rick and Annie for everything that they taught me, and actually try not to get emotional. It's this Sunday is Rick's 20-year anniversary of his passing. So, you know, that's if anyone wants to have a drink in the bar with me later tonight, we'll have a drink for Rick. Yeah, so coming back to kind of what people want nowadays, you know, staff want to be valued. I think that's really important. They want to feel comfortable in their work. They want to have the correct working environment, which in turn will lead to job satisfaction. We need to give them all the tools and equipment they need to do the job as well, you know. With my training business, I see so many people come to me and they don't even know the basics, you know, even if we're talking about packing a box or loading a truck, you know. People lying glasses flat, plates flat, you know, it's just absolutely shocking, some of the things that we see. But you know, we're there to help. So yeah, I think we need to really think a bit differently about who we employ and what they actually want. And you know, we want people to stay with us long term. You know, every time I take an employee on, you know, I'm thinking of like, he's with us now for the next 20 years, you know, but sadly that's not always the case. I don't know what the average length of time served is at the moment, Carolyn.
It can move from like a year to 25 years. It moves around.
Right, okay.
I don't have the statistics for how long people do stay in jobs, but it's a lot shorter than it used to be.
Yeah.
A lot shorter.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, as well, I think it takes about 5 years to take somebody from scratch and build them into a good, decent removals person. So I really think that learning from Fred on the road just doesn't cut it anymore. You know, if we're selling our services as professional movers, we've got to invest in these guys, the road crews, and you know, it's going to cost us money to do it, but I think it's going to cost us a lot more not to. So, they're my thoughts.
Hello. Yes. So what I'd ask people in the audience really is, do they know why the last person who left their company, why they left? Is anybody willing to actually share any of that? Why people are leaving? For money? Yeah. So one of the things that I first learned in recruitment was that if a candidate, so they come to us or me and they say, I'm looking at leaving, if they say it's money, we were taught it's never ever just money, it's environment, it's maybe a new manager that has come in, or it's there's not progression, or they're bored, or there's a reason why underneath the money. Sorry to take that, pull that apart there, Jackie. Sorry about that. So yes, so people actually want, as you're saying, more. People have changed an awful lot. COVID has had a very big impact on people's aspirations, what they want. They're looking more for hybrid. Obviously, you can't have hybrid when you're a porter. That doesn't work, does it? So they're looking for 4-day weeks and stuff like that. There's a lot to be said about, I ask clients, what are you offering, not in the money terms, but what else do you offer outside of money? Have you got a social environment? Have you got development? What is the career progression? What are you sharing your visions of the future of your company with your employers? Do they feel that they can actually have a voice within the company and be heard? These are things that people are seriously do want, and we are, as I said, living in the TikTok age where they have no concentration as well, a lot of people. So they get bored easily, unfortunately, but they do. Actually attracting people to come to a job interview has proved exceedingly difficult over the last year, which we find incredibly strange. We've had people that are earning in excess of 70,000 not turn up for job interviews, which I find very, very strange. If I book a restaurant and I'm not going, I'll phone up and I'll cancel it. I don't understand if you're at that pay grade and you decide not to go for an interview. I wouldn't burn my bridges and not say anything. I'd say, yeah, I'm not looking to go. So people's mentality has totally changed. A lot of companies now, the bigger corporate companies, are offering hybrid roles for the say the move coordinators and the office staff because it gave them flexibility. They didn't have to pay for office space, etc. So there was a lot of plus side to that. Having said that, on the shipping side, it's very, very rare for our clients to take anybody on hybrid at all. So personally, I would say look at all of the things that you offer that aren't actually costing money. There's the social side of it, the social clubs, or people, especially in the removals industry. One of the things about a driver is they're on their own. If they're not removals drivers, but people outside of the removals industry, they're in a cab on their own. They're driving twice a week at 10 hours, and then they've got the other hours that they do during the week. Removal drivers get addicted to actually good company, and so making a team environment is a massive plus, and that does keep people. So yeah, that's my take on things. And we have got, when I speak to candidates, an awful lot of the time it's environment. It's not having thank you. It's not feeling like as if they belong, and that's why they've moved. One of the big issues on there.
Thanks, Caroline. Steve, just before we open up, if I can just kind of summarise that by giving you a couple of statistics, and just my own view on life as well. So your retention strategies really start with your recruitment strategies. And there is an old adage, isn't there, that attitude over aptitude every day of the week. And at the point that you're having those initial conversations, you know, what we all ought to be doing as employers is trying to align the needs, the requirements, the ethos of the individual with those of the business. And just a couple of statistics following on from what Caroline was just talking about. 57% of people leave their current job role because they cannot see the way forward. Okay? They can't see that career progression. They can't see that next opportunity. And therefore money does become a factor because it's limiting. They can't see how I can earn more money. They can't see how I can get that better work-life balance. So I'm stuck in this particular rut. So having that as far as we can, formulated career path and progression is really, really important. But then if you're doing that, you have to walk the walk. It's no good just saying, this is what we can offer. You've then got to demonstrate that you can actually deliver against that. And that doesn't mean that we've got to invent jobs, but that does mean that we recognise and reward performance and aptitude. Okay? And then one last statistic before I do hand over to Steve, is that where that strategy is employed within businesses, then the retention rates demonstrably improve. So those companies that have clear progression plans and clear opportunities for engagement with their staff are 41% more likely to retain their staff than those who don't. Okay? And we can argue the costs of, well, it's going to cost me 50p an hour more to employ Fred than it was Harry. But actually, if you've got to constantly replace Harry every 18 months, that becomes hugely expensive and is not great news for your business. So my thoughts, the thoughts of the panel, open to questions. This is called a debate. Let's have a debate.
Yes, so, Madam, yes.
I've got a question for you. I was speaking to Caroline and Andy about this, and our last employees left us because it was more money. When they came for the interview, I sit them down. I have like a 3-month training plan, up to a 6-month and a yearly training plan. We were looking to get them through their forklift license and then in turn put them through their heavy goods, etc., and learn them progress into the office. They were with us just 3 months. One of them was just, and he was enjoying the job, thoroughly enjoyed the job, but then he says, I need to hand in my notice because I need more money. He was just in the door. He didn't know everything about export packing, unpacking, loading vehicles, etc. But there was a clear training plan in place. We did give him the opportunity to say, we're willing to train you, we're willing to invest in you, but by the same token, he wasn't willing to invest in me. And I'm the type of person who's, my word's my bond, what I say I will do. But he just didn't want to stay and see it through because of the money.
Yeah, and I can only sympathise because I can absolutely see that, and I've experienced exactly that same issue myself. The only thing, I guess, from my point of view, and I'll hand over to Andy and Caroline to add their two penneth, but when you're mapping out that career progression programme that says, I am prepared to invest in your training for this and this and this and this, would be to link that to what that means in terms of then financial reward at that point in time. So today you're on this, but I'm prepared to give you the time and invest, the resource in getting you qualified to this level, at which point your salary can move to that, and then the next level is it can move to that. So it's not just about seeing that, oh, I can become a forklift driver and a driver, but it's then aligning that to what that might mean from a financial return point of view as well. Let me, not just my views, we've got a couple of people here who might want to...
Just while you're swapping the mics over, can I just ask, did the person leave to go to somebody else in the same industry or to a different industry? A different industry.
Yeah, and I think you might just have been unlucky on that occasion, Jackie, but, if you weren't to have that system in place, they definitely wouldn't have stayed. That's the thing, so...
I'd just add, it's very difficult sometimes because when we hire people, sometimes it's called a halo and horns effect. So hiring for attitude, because you can't train an attitude to somebody. And I think sometimes we hire people because we really like them, and then they disappoint us down the road because we empathise with them. We think, oh, they're like me, I'm a hard worker, they'll be a hard worker, but they're not. So, I do think to bear that in mind. And then at times people do get bored and they go off and they want to do something else. So it's not always what about you've done. It's about there's something in their lives that has changed as well. I think that quite often happens, and then you do an exit interview and they say, oh, it's all your fault, this, that and the other. But quite often, it's good to have an exit interview, it's good to find out what they do say, but there are times where something's happened in their life and they've completely changed. But I'd agree with Ian, when you get to that level, then this is the pay that you'll get. When you get to that level, you get this, and that really does work well. Yeah.
Any other points anybody wants to raise? Yes, sir.
Hiya, I'm Zach from Sandor Removals. I'm currently 21 years old and I'm in university working for my father's company, and currently we operate on 3 vans and 1 lorry. My father and I agreed that we want to expand the business, and primarily that I'm going to expand it, helping my dad. So currently I'm doing the CPC course. I'm going to do export packing with yourself as well. What would you say is the next step for me to become a bigger company and to help us expand?
Who wants to take that one?
Oh, hello. There is another old adage, which is turnover is vanity, profit is sanity. Okay, so grow in a controlled manner. It's all very, very easy to say, I'm going to get 2 more trucks, I'm going to get 3 more men, I'm going to saturate this market. You need to absolutely interrogate and understand the costs in your business. You need to absolutely strategize why you want to do something, how you're going to measure the returns on it, and do things in incremental steps, okay? Be really, really clear about that. And particularly with the costs in your business, whatever approach you have to interrogating and organising your cost needs to be a very agile approach. Because if you're setting your cost base on the 1st of January every year, what happens when the fuel duty goes up? What happens when you give Fred a £1 an hour pay rise? What happens when you find you've got a truck that doesn't meet the ULEZ requirements? And you've got all of those things that you need to consider and which need to be constantly reflected in the price that you're charging to your customer. And excuse me. And there's one thing that sometimes as movers I think we kind of forget. And there is this, and it's a really dirty word, and I'm going to swear, and I apologise for that. It's this word called profit. Okay? You're in business to make some money. You should not apologise for that. So selling the service in a measured way, and again, I will apologise because I get on my soapbox about this stuff, but you know, if we only want to be seen as a job, then all we're going to give the customer to make their mind up on whether they want to use our services or not is the number at the bottom of the piece of the paper. Okay? So we've got to recognise that what we sell is a value-added service. Okay? It's not a widget. I'm not going to say, give me 500 quid and you can have that. There you go. You can touch it, seal it and feel it. What I'm saying is, I'm going to make you a promise. And for that promise, I want X amount of money. So we've got to be able to fulfill that. So your staff development programs, okay, how you're investing in them, the stuff we've been talking about here, so that you know and you're confident they're able to fulfill the promise that you've made to that customer that delivers the margins that you want, that allows you to grow your business in a controlled way. I'll get off my soapbox now.
Did you have a question, sir? Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. And hi, I'm Jason from D. Durham Removals in Horsham, West Sussex. Firstly, I endorse everything Ian does. I'm a huge fan of Ian, and I say to this young lad, if you haven't, go on Ian's cost modelling course. I went up at Watford last year, but you can do it online. I don't know if you've done it or not, but it totally backs up what he's saying about it's about profit. But going back, it's going off tangent a bit, going back to more the general topic of today of recruitment, going back to Andy and Caroline, I think my company is an example, I guess, of a nationwide problem, and that is competing against the likes of the supermarkets. I mean, for an example, I had a 17-year-old son last year who dropped out of college, unfortunately, for one reason or another. That's fine. Come and join the family business. You know, see how you get on. Now, he joins, because he's a bottom rung of the ladder. He's a porter that don't drive. You know, he's got to start off on the wage that represents that. So we started him off on, I can't remember what, £7.50 an hour, something like that. Within 6 months, he's left because Tesco's down the road are paying a 17-year-old £11.10 an hour. Stack shelves. And they're short-sighted at that age, you know. They can't see the bigger picture of the progression. You know, all they care about is, hang on, they want to have driving lessons and they want to take their girlfriend out and they want to go to football at the weekend. And you just can't compete. And it's so tough at the moment. It's not always been like this, and hopefully it won't always be like this. But, you know, we were on holiday and he gets a message. He's got a pay rise. I'm like, how'd you get a pay rise when it's not an appraisal? It's not an... Oh, when any supermarket gives a pay rise to their staff, the other supermarkets follow course. Well, it ain't bad. I might get a job there at Tesco's. And an example, you know, going back to saying, it's all about trying to sell the progression, the long-term plan, the environment. You know, if he stayed with us like some of the others, hopefully he would have felt important. He might come back. I hope he will. I'm fully supportive in doing what he's doing. Fully. He needs to go out and do other jobs and see the world and hopefully come back. But I'm sure it's a national problem. How do we compete? I asked to the experts, how do we compete against the supermarkets who, he gets, great, I get 20% off my shopping now, or 15% on payday weekends. The perks, the holidays. And he's virtually unsackable, right? They need staff so much that the amount of staff that ring in sick, I wouldn't be able to, my business wouldn't run the amount of staff that they have ringing sick. But they don't sack them because they're so desperate. This is in the southeast. How do you compete against paying a 17-year-old over £11 an hour with all the perks? I ask you, I ask the expert.
How do you compete, Andy?
Well, there's no easy answer, obviously. But as movers, and I don't want to sound brutal at all, but as movers, if we really up our game and we've got something to sell and charge the proper price to move house, yeah, that will then give us a fighting chance to pay the correct wage also. And I'll come back to what I said earlier. Some movers actually have some foresight and they're getting it right. And some movers are still quite busy at the moment. Other movers are not getting it so right and are not as busy and are not charging the correct number to do the move. So we've got to have something to sell. We need to think about what do we have as a mover to sell. It's a really tough question, but you really need to think to yourselves, what have I got to sell? What can I do to get this customer to pay the proper price so I can then look after the guys and pay the proper wage? Otherwise, it's like Ian said, the customer's just looking at the number. I do surveys all the time and they say, so-and-so removals has been round, and he walked around the house and left and said, we'll email the quote. He's not sold the customer anything. Customers just look at the number. Have something to sell. That's what you need.
Any other points before I lob in a hand grenade, which I do sometimes?
I
Do you want to say something?
that, yeah, if I can. I endorse what Andy said, and as I said a moment or two ago, you know, what we are is a profession, and we need to really wake up and start selling ourselves in that way, you know, and valuing our people in that way. And on the point you make, Jason, I completely empathise with that. And somehow or other, those two things have to align. We've got to get the wage structure within our industry to the point where we're not necessarily bumping into that. But as somebody who worked in East London for 18 years, I can tell you every single Christmas I would lose 50-60% of my drivers because Tesco's or Sainsbury's were paying more for those short-term contracts. And every January, every February, they'd be back knocking on my door, can I come back? Because it was very short-termism. And sorry, Steve, the last thing I would say as well, and this is just my own view on life, and I appreciate it doesn't necessarily represent what others might think, but would I, even at 17, would I have thought, well, actually, stacking shelves in Tesco's 5 days every week, looking at the same tin on the same shelf, at the same people, or actually I could be in a truck going to Berlin, or I could be going up to Glasgow, or I could be going somewhere else. So, you know, the opportunity to travel, and I know it's in a slightly different environment, but meet some fantastic people and have some fantastic experiences that just cannot be replicated in that environment. And to me, that's part of how we need to sell the opportunity.
Thanks, Ian. I actually wrote a story recently in the magazine, which was, I think was entitled something about not a sexy business. And it was because people had always said to me, nobody ever grows up wanting to be a removals man because it's not a sexy business. And I'd just come back from a trip to Toronto that somebody else was paying for. And as Ian says, people travel all over Europe, they travel all over the country, they're meeting people every day, different walks of life, working in their houses, being the only people in the entire process of moving house that they actually confide in. I think that's a very sexy business. And yet we seem to have managed to convince ourselves, and therefore convince the people that we hope to encourage to work for us, that it isn't. And I think that's a great shame. Anyway, the hand grenade that I wanted to lob in, because we've only got 5 minutes left, unless anybody else wants to say something. No? Okay. Let me just do this. There's no point in training people, because if you do, they leave and you've got to do it all again. Anybody agree with that? There's quite a lot of nodding heads around, and I just wonder what our panel think about that. I said it was a hand grenade, didn't I?
Yeah. Thanks, Steve. So there's obviously a financial impact to training your staff, but all I can really say is if you don't do it, you know, what's going to change? You really need to give yourselves the best fighting chance to get the proper price for every move that you do, having something to sell, and one of the things you've got to sell, like Jackie does with John, is staff and his experience. And let's just create loads and loads of Johns is what we need to do. And you just might find that by investing in them and making them feel worthwhile and making them feel appreciated and giving them the confidence to do the job, making them feel comfortable in their job, that you actually end up keeping them. Or if they do leave, in Ian's case, they might just come back. But I don't know what else we do.
Anybody else have any thoughts on that? No, tricky one, isn't it? Ian, did you want to say anything?
Just a kind of, you know, again, going off on a tangent, and not specifically in relation to your grenade, Steve, although it does kind of allude to it, is that when we're employing people as well, whether that's a porter or a driver or a customer services person, you know, the primary job role, I guess, is porter, driver, customer services. But you think about the other things they do. They're a counsellor, they're a therapist, they're an advisor. You know, they're helping these people through some really, really tough situations. And so that's why they need to feel valued. If we're investing in them, if we're valuing them, if we're valuing what they do, and that's not all just about the money, they're more likely to carry out those functions more diligently and are less likely to follow Steve's grenade and say, well, you've trained me, thanks very much, I'm off. And my final, I don't want to hog this, but the other thing to consider with that as well is that training is not a one-time experience. It is a consistent program. Okay, it happens all of the time, where there always has to be something that you can do to help your employee improve his or her opportunity. The what's in it for me bit.
Thank you. Any other points before we close? No, well, thank you very much indeed. Thank you to our panel, to Ian and Andy and Caroline. Thank you very much. And can I just say that, our next session starts in 15 minutes. If you're in the self-storage industry, then you want to take part. It's all about the market in the self-storage industry right now with the beautiful and ever entertaining Rennie Schaefer. So see you later.